June 26, 1944, Hollandia Air Base, Dutch New Guinea. A half-finished checkers game lay between Lieutenant Colonel Charles MacDonald and his operations officer when a knock came at the screen door. The visitor introduced himself quietly. The name at first didn't register. Charles Lindbergh. MacDonald looked up from the board. The Charles Lindbergh, the man who had crossed the Atlantic alone 17 years earlier, stood there in the sweltering Pacific heat, asking permission to discuss P-38 combat operations. Neither man could know that this casual interruption would change aerial warfare in the Pacific. Over the next 6 weeks, a 42-year-old civilian barred from wearing a U.S. uniform would teach America's top fighter group how to fly farther, fight longer, and return home safer. This is not just the story of technology. It is the story of a man exiled from his country's military, who found redemption through knowledge, precision, and courage, transforming the very way the U.S. Air Forces fought a war. Before he walked into that tent in New Guinea, Charles Lindbergh had already changed the world once. On May 20th to 21st, 1927, he flew the Spirit of Street, Louis, from New York to Paris, 3,600 miles alone across an ocean no man had conquered solo. He navigated by dead reckoning and a small periscope, his forward view blocked by massive fuel tanks. Every drop of gasoline mattered. When he landed after 33.5 hours, 85 gallons remained a miracle of fuel efficiency. That obsession with precision became his life's signature. Throughout the 1930s, he surveyed routes for Pan American Airways, flying across the Pacific and Atlantic. He learned that manufacturers' maximum range numbers were not limits, they were averages. Lindbergh discovered every engine had a secret harmony, a balance between manifold pressure, RPM, mixture, and airspeed that could stretch miles far beyond the charts. But as his technical mastery grew, his reputation fractured. During the late 1930s, Lindbergh became the face of American isolationism. His America First speeches and public admiration for German engineering made him a pariah. President Franklin Roosevelt despised him. When war came, Lindbergh asked to serve, and Roosevelt personally ensured he would never again wear a military uniform. Barred from the Army Air Corps, Lindbergh turned to the private sector, working for United Aircraft Corporation as a civilian consultant. He tested the F-4U Corsair, advised on B-24 Liberator production, and even flew dangerous high-altitude tests in P-47 Thunderbolts. His reports were technical masterpieces. His flight data solved production issues and improved safety, but Lindbergh wanted more. He wanted to be in the fight. In early 1944, he persuaded United Aircraft to send him as a technical representative to the Pacific. Officially, he was there to observe. Unofficially, he intended to fly. Before departure, he bought a naval officer's uniform with no insignia from Brooks Brothers in New York. At a bookstore, he purchased a small New Testament. In his journal, he wrote, "Since I can carry only one book, that is my choice." It would not have been a decade ago, but the more I learn, the less competition it has. He left San Diego on April 24, 1944, bound for Guadalcanal. The mission was secret, not even Roosevelt knew. In the South Pacific, Lindbergh began flying with Marine Fighting Squadron 222, officially as an observer. Unofficially, his guns were live. On his first combat sortie near Rabaul, he strafed Japanese positions alongside Marine pilots, then calmly explained afterward how they could take off with twice the rated bomb load of their F-4Us without accidents. He adjusted throttle curves, power settings, and takeoff speeds. Accident rates dropped immediately. Word spread fast. The legendary transatlantic flyer was flying combat missions and improving performance everywhere he went. By June, he turned his focus to the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, the twin-engine fighter dominating the Pacific. He had heard of a group that pushed the aircraft to its limits, the 475th Fighter Group, known as Satan's Angels. If he wanted to learn real combat flying, that was where to go. June 26, 1944, Hollandia Air Base. MacDonald, age 29, a 10 victory ace, commanded the 475th. When Lindbergh appeared, MacDonald thought it was a joke. A civilian, famous for an Atlantic flight nearly 2 decades earlier, wanted to talk about their combat procedures. But when Lindbergh mentioned he had been sent by General Hutchinson to discuss P-38 operations, MacDonald listened. Within minutes, Lindbergh was invited to fly a mission the next morning. That night, he stayed in camp, and by morning, word had spread like wildfire. Charles Lindbergh is flying with Satan's Angels. Some pilots were thrilled, others skeptical. "Let's see what the old guy can do," muttered Major Thomas McGuire, a 15 victory ace. The following morning, June 27th, Lindbergh climbed into a P-38J under tropical rain. He flew as Blue 3 on McGuire's wing. Their mission: strafe Japanese barges near Kaibobo Bay. Anti-aircraft fire rose through the clouds. Lindbergh pressed in, firing cannon bursts that tore through a target barge. The mission returned safely. But the ground crew soon noticed something extraordinary. Lindbergh's plane consistently returned with far more fuel than any other aircraft on the same sortie. After a 6-hour reconnaissance flight, others landed on fumes. Lindbergh had 210 gallons. They left. MacDonald called a meeting. In a crude recreation hut with dirt floors and bare bulbs, Lindbergh addressed the entire group. He explained that their standard cruise, 2200 RPM, auto-rich mixture was safe, but wasteful. Then, he outlined his radical idea: reduce RPM to 1600, increase manifold pressure to 30 inches, use auto-lean mixture, maintain 185 miles per hour. Gasps rippled through the room. Every pilot had been taught that running oversquare, where manifold pressure exceeds RPM, would destroy the engine. Lindbergh smiled. "Not if you understand what the engine is doing," he explained the physics. By lowering RPM, each combustion cycle used fuel more efficiently. Increasing manifold pressure restored power without wasting fuel. The lower RPM meant cooler temperatures and less mechanical stress. At first, pilots refused to believe it, but MacDonald ordered trials. Over the next week, they tested the Lindbergh settings. To their amazement, the engines ran cooler. Fuel gauges dropped slower. The savings were dramatic. The P-38's combat radius jumped from 570 miles to 750. Soon, pilots were flying 9-hour missions, something once thought impossible. The impossible, it seemed, had become standard operating procedure. Lindbergh flew often not just as observer, but as leader. His call sign, Mr. Lindbergh. He taught by example, showing that precision and courage could coexist. On July 28, 1944, during a bomber escort mission near Seram, Lindbergh's flight engaged 2 Japanese Mitsubishi Ki-51 Sonya aircraft. For half an hour, the lead Japanese pilot, Captain Saburo Shimada, fought desperately, outturning the faster P-38s. Finally, Shimada turned head-on toward Lindbergh. At 5 to 100 miles per hour closure, the 2 aircraft raced toward each other. Lindbergh centered the Sonya's engine in his gun sight and held the trigger for 6 seconds. Cannon shells tore through the enemy's propeller. Smoke erupted. The Sonya dived into the sea. Unofficially, the group agreed Lindbergh had scored a kill. 3 days later, a dogfight with Zeros nearly ended his life. Only MacDonald shouted warning, "Break right," saved him. Headquarters finally stepped in. The civilians' combat days were over. By the time he left the Pacific on August 12, 1944, Lindbergh had flown roughly 50 combat missions, 25 of them in P-38s. The results were undeniable. By October 1944, P-38 groups across the Pacific had adopted Lindbergh's method. Manuals were rewritten, charts updated, range records shattered. With his technique, fighters could escort bombers nearly 1,000 miles, strike targets once unreachable, and return home with reserve fuel. The extended range accelerated MacArthur's advance toward the Philippines, operations that would have taken months now completed in weeks. The human cost dropped. Pilots who once ditched at sea now made it back. The Pacific's vast distances no longer guaranteed Japanese safety. What Lindbergh had proven in 6 weeks became doctrine for an entire theater of war. Despite his pre-war controversies, Lindbergh earned the respect of those who mattered most, the men who flew beside him. America's top ace, Major Richard Bong, later said, "Lindbergh was as hot a pilot as any of us. He'd have been out there knocking off Japs every day if General Kenny had let him." Lindbergh's contributions went beyond numbers. He demonstrated that civilian expertise could transform combat when applied fearlessly. He showed that institutions could learn from outsiders and that courage came in many forms. He continued consulting after returning home, testing captured Japanese aircraft and advising manufacturers. His notes helped formalize the new lean of peak engine procedures in official U.S. Army Air Force's manuals. Charles Lindbergh died on August 26, 1974, in Maui. His grave bears a single verse from Psalm 139. "If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea," it is a fitting epitaph. From the spirit of street, Louis over the Atlantic to the twin-boom Lightning over the Pacific, Lindbergh spent his life proving that limits are illusions, that mastery of craft can outlast politics, and that knowledge, courage, and precision can alter the course of history. In the summer of 1944, a civilian taught America's finest fighter pilots that the impossible was simply the untried. He came as an observer, he left as a comrade, and he changed the way the Pacific War was fought, not through rank or power, but through understanding. That is the legacy of Charles Lindbergh, the man who taught the Lightning to fly farther than anyone believed possible.